What's up, everybody? One Fun Guy podcast coming back at you live. I was just on with Hexa, and Heather was awesome, but now I'm going on with the counterpart. So Kelly will hop on in just a minute, guys. We're going to do another one. We're going to knock out another podcast here. We were supposed to do it last night, and I goofed and had a meeting. And I'm going to wait for him to come on, and we're going to hang out again, and we're going to do it all over. So I don't know what we're going to talk about tonight. I think we're just going to wing it and get into what we do best, and that's, music and bands and artists and everything that we kind of find together in our fun selves of what we're going to chat about. So it'll be awesome. We're going to go right back on and see what we got here and kind of go from there. So I'm going to get him on and see what we have here. Let's see if I can invite him. I don't know if I can find him. Let's see if he's... Oops, I hit the wrong button. Now I'm going to get bombarded with people that want to hop on with me. I goofed. Hey, there he is. What up?
Hey, how's it going?
Good. I was telling everybody how I goofed last night, and we didn't end up going back live like we were supposed to, and it was my fault. So.
Oh man, shit! I was so wiped out myself, So it was a good night to skip, but Friday night, we've got the weekend to recover, don't we? I know
we do.
I know you just had a session with my wife, so
yeah, it was awesome.
I admire your energy.
Yeah, I figured I'll just go through with it tonight. We'll push on through, and then that way we can recoup for next Thursday. So
yeah, I was thinking,
back in the swing of it.
Me and Heather, I mean, she told you, right? But we have a gig on Sunday, so that means that tomorrow is just because the way we are. It's like okay, we gotta make sure that we have everything in place so we can just load the car, on Sunday and get going. And it's. People don't realize so much, like when you're playing a gig, like how much you have to prepare just to get there, But yeah, I think there was a really good conversation that you guys had. It was fun.
It was awesome, and we only scratched the surface, right? Like there's so much more that we're gonna talk about musically, and it just. I tried to get everything in one. It could have been a 2.5 hour podcast or longer. I could have kept going.
Yeah. No, I'm lucky to be married to that woman because she's very interesting. There's a lot of shit going on.
Yeah, she is awesome. Yeah, it's cool.
It's a lot to discover.
Weird because it's kind of unique because you could have two different people with different thought processes and different backgrounds. And kind of put all that aside and just have a conversation civilly. And that's what I love, right? That's what makes us unique. That's what makes us people. If we all thought the same way and we all believed the same thing and we all liked the same stuff, it'd be so boring, right? this is what makes us unique.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking, sorry, I'm starting to get a little warm here. Because as you guys were talking, right? I was thinking about the fact that we didn't really have a topic picked out for tonight, but I really do think that the metal scene, which is mostly what you and me talk about, right?
Yeah.
And there's obviously exceptions, but I think that a lot of people maybe undiagnosed with some sort of autism spectrum type of disorder or whatever.
I agree.
Or are just generally feeling like misfits for one reason or another. And that is why it's yes, we are attracted to the scene, which is almost by design put to the side. It is not supposed to be part of normie
Yeah,
society, right?
it's definitely counterculture, right? And it has been.
Heather being autistic, and she tells me that I'm more than likely ADHD. I mean, I've gone through life without, thinking about any letters attached to my name or whatever, right? But, she knows a lot about the shit. So maybe I am, maybe I'm not. I don't know. I don't really care. She cares a lot about it for herself. I don't really care about it so much for myself. I respect that she does, and anybody that does, I care about it.
Yeah.
But I do think that there's got to be a reason why, people are attracted to this, right? And to some it happens through trauma, perhaps, like through bad upbringing, through maybe living in a cult. I don't know, like Heather or whatever. That it's a reaction.
Yeah.
And to some, it's just the way that their brain works, which is more to me. I was brought up in a pretty loving home that I never really felt belonging to, and then this thing happened that was the middle community, and it was like, oh, these people are like me.
Right. And it's you can find that in anything, right? You can go to, as like I said, as much as we talk about it, but like go to a Taylor Swift concert, right? And see the people that show up. NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys were another one, right? Like they had stardom beyond stardom, and I didn't necessarily get it, but 300 million fans can't be wrong, right? Like they were a global phenomenon. It wasn't just the US or the North American scene. It was worldwide. Kids in Japan and China and the Middle East and Australia, they were huge everywhere they went. So
but my point to that is that after the show, after they buy the record, and they have all the posters in the rooms and everything, but do they go looking through classified ads in obscure magazines to find other people that like it too, and the like stuff, and spend their money on trading tapes and so on to find other bands like Backstreet Boys? Where are they?
Right. So I think that when you look at a band like, let's say, like NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, and there was another one, right? There were like 3 big boy bands at the time, right? And they were kind of,
they were Swedish. I'm sorry.
Yeah, they were the it bands, right? And every 14-year-old girl was screaming over, those bands, right? But I think that it was so in your face, right? You can go to any, at the time, Dominic's or Jewel or Super Low, and go to any supermarket in the world and walk down the magazine aisle, and that's what you saw. So you didn't have to necessarily find it. It was in your face, right? Those bands were everywhere. So you could pick up every People magazine, every Inquirer, every, music magazine at the time that was focused on music, Rolling Stone magazine, right? They were on the cover. It was in your face. You didn't have to go find that. Where the obscure bands, you weren't seeing them. You didn't know who they were, right? You're not seeing the, underground cult metal bands that are there, that they weren't mainstream. So it was much easier as a dynamic, right? If you went to an NSYNC concert, there's 30,000 other NSYNC fans there that were there for NSYNC, and you could probably hook up with, any of the 14 or 15 or 16-year-old girls that were all standing in a crowd together, would have all been universally there to see them, right? But it was everywhere. You wouldn't have necessarily known if you were a 15 or 16-year-old girl and you were into, let's say, I'm trying to think of like a 90s like underground metal band that would have been like popular for more of a mainstream type of thing. Let's say, yeah, perfect, right? So you wouldn't find that, right? Like that would be hard to go see a show because they're not playing sold out arenas. They're playing more clubs type stuff, right? And you have to be 21 to get into them, so you couldn't even probably see them anyways. But everybody was going to an NSYNC concert was no age. So it was more in your face. And that's kind of, I think, what you hit on earlier is the metal community has always been the kind of like underscaled scene in music that like people know about it and they understand it, but unless you're in it, you're not going to get it.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. And I think a significant difference that we're talking about too is that when we're talking about the Taylor Swift slash Miley Cyrus, Backstreet Boys type of thing, is that is still sort of mainstream culture, right? Like it is, like you said, you walk down the aisle
no
and
doubt.
it's in the at the checkout aisle, right by the cashier.
Yeah.
Those are the stories that you have to check out, and you might and the gauge of how big of a fan you are is whether you know what color nail polish Taylor Swift has or whatever, right?
Right.
So that is more like more and more deep knowledge about the mainstream, and I think but what I was getting at with the metal scene and that feeling of I am totally feeling belonging to the outside of that, right?
Yeah.
Which is so the bragging rights doesn't come from knowing the color of the nail polish, but rather like I have heard this band from Bolivia that printed this cassette, 20 copies of a cassette, and it's fucking awesome, and the bragging rights comes from I figured out this deeper than deep obscure shit that you don't know about type of thing, right? But even there's there's elitism, but I don't think that the elitism comes from that rather than I found this shit,
But again, too, if you go right, so let's take the two most famous popular streaming platforms right now is probably Spotify and Apple Music, right? If you go to Apple Music and you say, give me a suggestion, right? More than likely what's going to pop up is your 5 big artists around, right? You're going to get your Taylor Swifts, you're going to get your Eminems, you're not going to get your Cradle of Filth in that top 5, right? So they're already gearing you towards what you want to listen to, right? Or what they want you to listen to. So if you're a young kid at 9 or 10 years old and you say, Mom or Dad, can I listen to Spotify? And you say, yeah, go ahead. And they pick an artist. Well, they're going to see the artist that Spotify wants you to see, right? They're not going to get the Nine Inch Nails. They're not going to get the Rammsteins. They're going to get the popular bands, right? They're going to get the Taylor Swifts. They're going to get the Migoses. They're going to get the Drakes. They're going to get, because that's what is their popular music based on downloads and song likes, right? Where, you're not going to get in. And that's the thing, right? If you type in classical music, right, or classic rock, right, what's going to pop up? It's probably going to be your Bostons and your Kansases. It's not going to be the Misfits, right? It's not going to be the Exploited. It's not going to be, the Sex Pistols. So you already know that that's what they're kind of gearing you to pre-program yourself for. And I'm not saying those bands are bad. I'm just saying that's what you're going to get. You're going to get the cookie cutter classic rock bands.
Yeah, and I can give you a very personal example here, right? So me having been 20 plus years out of the extreme metal scene, just sort of picking up things here and there sporadically over time. But I always listened to music, and I had Spotify, and I had the daily mixes and all that shit. Right. So I picked up on a band here and there, right? But as soon as I got into the TikTok thing, where it was like, what's your most extreme thing, or what's your most recent finds? And I see bands that had never ever showed up in my Spotify in the last few years, right? Good example is Anal Natrak, which is a band that it seemed like most people knew about, like within the audience that reaches my folks, your folks, and stuff. You knew about them before. Everybody seemed to know about them before, but I did not, just because I've been out of touch for so long, right? But I got the name, and then I started listening to them, and they are so fucking good. It's unbelievable, right? I listened to them a lot lately, right? But it did not,
and their secret,
show
right?
up in the algorithms for anything of what I listened to before. It did not show up on YouTube. It did not show up on Spotify.
Right. So, and eclectically about them, right? How they started and what they do, right? Because they're not a band.
No, I don't. I mean, so far, I know nothing about the band. I haven't really, my time is they're limited with what I'm trying to do right. So
it's a very unique thing about them, but they're two guys. And one guy plays all the instruments. Yeah. And then when they tour, they'll to go live on tour with. But when they make albums, it's two dudes. One guy plays all the instruments, all the other guys sings and programs. It's it. It's just two guys. So when they go on tour, it's not the band. It's just two dudes. So it's kind of a cool story because all their albums are mixed by two people. It's not a band. But when they go on tour, they'll hire session guys to play with them, and that's how they do it. It's a cool kind of concept.
Yeah, and full respect to that, right? Absolutely. And I think that we're going to see more and more of that. I'm trying for me, because I'm as you know, I'm trying to make my own music too, and it's just me. I don't even have another guy to work with me. It's just me sitting here in this very room where I am right now. And I've thought about it, it might be more interesting visually for people joining if I hired a guitar player, if I hired a bass player, if I hired a drummer to play the shit that I program on the computer. But there's the moral dilemma there a little bit, right? Like, where is the lie, right? It's honest to have people actually play the instruments.
Sure.
So that is one way of looking at the honesty. Like, the shit is actually being played, but the way I created it was still on the computer.
Right.
Yeah. So am I faking it? And I don't think is it more fake
I don't
to
think
me
there's any
to hire people to play what I programmed on the computer, or am I being more honest by just being created on the computer and totally owning up to the fact that this is 90% computer music?
More and more artists, perfect example, right? It's a huge scene, but look at the EDM scene, right? The electronic dance music. You have DJs that are all by themselves, piano, bass, guitar, saxophone, any instrument you could think of. It's one dude. He's got one turntable here, a mixing board, and another turntable here, and he can have 35,000 people watching him, big money to go and see that. So there's no shame in that, right? DJs have been doing that for years. That's what they do. They program their own music. They have a laptop. They hit play, and they spin, and they overtone their music. That's what they do. That's what a DJ does. There's no shame in that. That's how they make their money.
Some are more honest about it than others. Like, you can have a guy like Steve Aoki, right? That has a rack of 8 turntables on his stage kit, right? But he still somehow finds the time to go into the audience and bounce balloons. That's
awesome,
the guy that's
right? He's a great example of that.
But it still sounds great, and he's giving you an experience. The audience enjoy the fact that he's got a rack and all that stuff, right? It makes it seem real. It's about visuals. It's about impressions, right? I totally get it, and I don't want to knock it at all, right? It's like Judas Priest or Motorhead with like 48 Marshall stacks behind a wall of amps. Do you really think that they needed to use 48 amps to play the music? No, it's all there for show.
No, it's
you know
aesthetic.
so
Yeah.
so it's all it's so much fake. I even saw like a what most respected guitar players in metal of all time, Dimebag Darrell, that was like doing a
He stacks Randalls.
famous wah pedal solo. It was a guy behind the stage that was actually doing the wah pedal movements, so Dimebag didn't have to worry about that particular. So it happens all the time. People fake. Okay, it's standard. I Dead Mouse, Canadian DJ, he totally owns up to it. He says every show I go to, I bring a USB stick. Dead Mouse, Canadian DJ, he totally owns up to it. He says every show I go to, I bring a USB stick. That's all these flashy things, things that light up or whatever. He has his hat and whatever. But he says my art happens in the studio. That's where it is, and then I bring it to the people and play it loud, and they love it.
There's no
that's where it is, and then I bring it to the people and play it loud, and they love it.
There's no secret to DJing now, right? Because most of your standard DJ, their setup equipment is going to be a turntable, a mixing board, and a laptop. And they literally open their laptop in front of you, and they hit the button, right? They'll show you do it. All their music's there. 1 through 17 or however many songs they're going to play, and they truck it out, and they there's no shame in that, and that's what they do, right? They know that that's what's going to get the crowd involved, and they're going to sample, and they're going to dub, and they're going to take, and then that's what they do, and I don't think there's any secret to that now, whereas before there might have been. But again, one of our favorite artists, we mentioned it before, look at Trent Reznor. There's no shame in that. He's always had a laptop with him.
Yeah.
You watch Nine Inch Nails play,
but he also. But he also hires a band when he plays live, right? He has a drummer.
But you listen to a studio album.
Kimmy was posted commenting here. I can play guitar. I can play guitar. I am going to play guitar when I play live. But I also can't at the same time play drums. I can't also at the same time play the synthesizer that I programmed to sound the exact way that I want my music to be presented, right? There's a vision in my head of how I want shit to sound,
right?
Well, I want to deliver that vision to the audience, right? And not I don't honestly I don't give a shit if there's an actual drummer that plays exactly the way that I want them to play the drums. It would always feel like cruel to me if I would tell a drummer to, hey buddy, don't improvise. I programmed these drums to be exactly the way that I wanted to sound. So if you deviate from that, you're a fucking asshole. Because you're not respecting my vision for the drums, right?
But look at like GarageBand from, if you have an iPhone, right? I know I don't think you have an iPhone, right? You have Android.
Yeah, but I know the principle.
Right. So GarageBand is a keyboard on your phone. You put the app in, and you have a keyboard. Then you put the keys that you want to play. So you start off with a fret and a G, E, D, F, right? Then you go to the drums and you hit the pattern G, E, D, F. This drums will sync up with the piano, which will sync up with the guitar, which will sync up with the bass. You can create a song using your phone, right? It doesn't take musical talent to do it. It's just, if you get a beat.
It does though.
Right, but I'm just saying, if you get a beat and you get something, a 5-year-old could do it. Now, what you do with it from there is unique, right? If you're going to make it sound better, but the basis part of it is very innate, right? And you take the best musicians in the world, right? When they write their famous popular songs, most of them are doing it in a session, right? They're just hanging out. A guitarist will play chord, and that guy will say, wait, play that again. And he'll play it again, and they'll say, okay, now the wheels are turning, right? They're on their bus. They're not, they're not sitting in a studio writing an album. Most of this comes off of them hanging out or listening to something and say, hey, that sounds really good. Why didn't we ever record that? Like, that's a really good riff. And then they'll put it together, and that's, how music is made, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing new around that.
Right.
It's just,
so that's it.
It's just that it's easier for people to tap into.
Sure.
There are tons of YouTube videos about the 4 magic chords. Don't Stop Believing and all the major hits that all have the same 4 chords. It's not a secret to songwriters that and they fall naturally. So it's like, okay, so now you can do that in GarageBand, and you can have a 4-on-the-floor beat to it, and you can have the standard trance saw synth to it or whatever, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's still not hard to figure out, but the point is that what you do with it. And people will catch on to that. So yeah, you can put those 4 magic chords together and have cookie cutter instrumentation to it, and it'll be something decent that grandma will like. But there's it's still not gonna at the end of the day, you have to have something that appeals to people on a level that they haven't felt like before. It could be the same 4 chords. I think those same 4 chords will go on for another couple of hundred years, because that's just how our brains are wired.
Yeah.
We love those chords, but it's a matter of coming up with different ways of representing them. So
absolutely.
So I have nothing against GarageBand or any of those things to do that.
It's super accessible, right? And it's fun because gets people into, experimenting with music and experimenting with instruments and getting their hands on things they normally wouldn't get a chance to do. And it's very readily accessible. Are you familiar with the band?
Martin, 14 years old, that has a great idea for a song, can write a song, and it's fucking awesome. But the thing is that Max Martin, 53 years old, hitmaker supreme, may not have thought of that particular melody, but Martin 12 years old did, and now Martin 12 years old can get credit for having coming up with a brilliant song melody to the same 4 chords that Max Martin wrote 40 years ago.
Are you familiar with the band Trivium?
I am familiar with them. Yeah, I haven't heard much of their stuff, but I am familiar.
Their
with them.
singer and guitarist Matt Heffy, he goes live on TikTok and basically stands in front of a keyboard and starts writing songs with a keyboard and a synthesizer. And it's the coolest thing because you can see his mind working, right? When he's doing it, he'll play something and he'll like stop, and you could tell he's like the wheels are turning. And it's just such a cool process to see somebody like that, who's a renowned musician and one of the better metal bands out there, how his mind works when he's singularly doing it. It's a cool thing to watch because a lot of musicians don't open themselves up to that, right? They hide away in studios. They kind of tuck their stuff away. If they come up with something, they don't want somebody to take it, right? They want to have, full responsibility for creating something. And he's kind of the opposite. He's like, this is what I do. I come live and I start playing stuff for you guys. So it's a cool concept to see because it's like he can wake up one morning and write the greatest song ever, or he could just mess around for an hour. You never know what you're going to get.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, I'm pretty new to this TikTok thing too. And when I got the permission to do TikTok lives, that was one of the first things I did, was to sort of like, okay, I'll have people check in to see, I'll try to compose something, see what I come up with in an hour type of thing. But I guess because I'm nobody and I don't have many followers, or I have a few more now than I did then, or whatever.
I don't.
It does take a certain audience and certain reputation. So if you're Trivium, if you're the Trivium guy,
Yeah.
then you get that. But I don't. I think that the creative process
Yeah.
is something that is so highly unique. So if you would watch that guy from Trivium do his stuff compared to if you were watching me do my stuff, compared to if you watched Ola England or um, Nick Anderson or whoever else, Trey Asak Thoth, I don't know, but to go through their process, I think you would find a different flavor in all of them, and it would be super interesting to see anybody's creative process.
Yeah.
So I am hoping that the TikTok platform will get a reputation where that will happen more than having the reputation of, oh, it's dancing teens or people showing their travel logs.
And it's crazy because I took a screenshot of them doing it this morning, and if you can see at the very, very bottom, my comment is right. Where is it? I don't want to delete my photo. I'm going to try. My comment's at the bottom there. So I said, nice. I'm still doing the stuff with Ibaraki, which is kind of Japanese, the metal band. There were 6 people watching him. He was interacting with everybody, right? And the guy's a rock star, right? Like, this guy could sell out 30,000 seat arenas with his band. And here he is on TikTok on a Friday morning. I'm watching him as I'm getting ready for work, and I'm interacting with him. So I took a screenshot of it because I'm like, no one's going to believe this, right? That he's interacting with his audience. And it was just like the coolest thing because, most of these guys, when they get on, they get 300-400 people watching them, and all they're doing is talking to themselves. He had like 6 people on. He was interacting with everybody. It was great.
Yeah, and I mean, we should be doing the same thing. So, Kimmy, you're having fun. Hello.
Yeah, right, Holly, what's up? Everybody that's on. Say what's up.
With the people that are coming.
Blooming Sunflow, right?
Yeah.
Everybody who's on. Kelsey, Wu-Tang.
Yeah.
Christina, what's up?
It's super awesome. Honestly, I envy that a little bit. I did a couple of lives this week where I was just doing, hey, let me know any unrecognized or underrated bands that you like, and I got I got so many suggestions. I could not keep up with the shit.
And that's.
So I would almost prefer in that sense, to have 6 that I could really interact with, and it's like, let's have a chat. Let's work through this, especially if it's like trying to create a piece of music. I don't think that I would want 100 people telling me what to do, right? So there's there's that, depending on what it is that you're trying to do. There's they're like a listening party. Yeah, you probably want a shit ton of listeners.
You want the interaction, right?
But if you're going through a creative process, you don't want 1,000 people throwing their ideas at you, right?
Right. And that's the thing, right? You would rather have 4 or 5 people engage with you and be interactive with you than 100 people watching you and not saying anything, right? Like that's what you're going for, right? That's the goal, is to get people to talk with you and be involved with what you're doing, and having your live be more hyper focused on interacting with people and, throwing questions out. What are your favorite bands? What kind of music do you guys like? Because that's the cool thing, right? Like, something might be as simple as, I don't really care for this band, but I like this band. It's like, awesome, right? Fill me in on what you like, right? Because we're pretty open-minded when it comes to music, right? And not everything everybody suggests I'm going to fall in love with, but most of the people that say, hey, have you heard the song? And I say no, I end up liking it, right? No matter what genre it is, they're pretty good songs, right? People aren't saying, listen to a thing that sounds like it was made, on a, back alley somewhere, right? Most of this stuff is pretty good, so.
Yeah, no, but I think you're absolutely right. But I think to some extent, what I was saying too is that it depends on the context of your live. What do you want your participation to be? Like I said, if you're in an opinion type of context of a live, then it's like, you want lots of opinions. You want things to just fly by and, and respond to that, and sort of to be able to analyze, okay, so what's the average opinion or whatever, right? But if you're trying to compose something, you don't want 1,000 opinions, going at you at that time. So I think it all depends on what it is that you're trying to accomplish and what you can see.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, you and me are both sort of like content creators at this point, right? So we do tend to want to have a lot of people join our shit, right? We want to create more followers. We want more people to watch us. And even though I know that both you and me are not primarily focused on getting gifts and money or whatever, right? Although that's great. It's more about the gratification of having people engaged.
Everything's in moderation.
And to have people feel like they are part of what it is that you're doing, right?
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
If you have 1,000 people watching your live stream, and 300 of them basically share this more or less the same opinion, they can address all 300 of them by acknowledging their general opinion, right?
Yeah, and I think that when it comes with that, right, I think the more engagement you get and the more interaction you get and the more you grow your channel and the more people start to follow you, I think that's byproduct of just entertaining people, right? Like saying something that's on is productive, right? Because there are people that literally will go live on TikTok, put a blanket over their head and go to sleep, and they have 30 people watching them. Right. And it's like, and that to me is like, how did that happen? Right. We're like, all we're doing is try to have a good, fun show and talk about metal and music and stuff like that. But when you look at the more like the obscure things that are happening on here, sometimes you just scratch your head and you're like, what the fuck is going on? Right. Like, how is somebody not engaging anybody and just sitting there not saying anything, getting all this interaction when we're saying interact with us, right? Like, talk to us, be cool with us, say something, and nobody does. And you have somebody that will literally go on live and pretty much sit there and not say anything, and their comment section's flying off the chain. It's like, I don't get it. I don't understand it.
Yeah. No, you never know, right? I mean, when I started doing this, I put effort into making skits and having sort of provocative type of questions or whatever, and nothing really took off. And then I just filmed a guy at a Star Trek convention that was an awesome board costume, and that post got like fucking 30,000 views. It was like the least amount of effort I could have ever put in. It was literally 10 seconds of my life.
Yeah, I got lucky.
It's still my highest performing TikTok post.
Yeah.
And then it's like, when you're trying to accomplish something and you're trying to build something, that it is pretty discouraging. But it is also, the nature of art, right? It is. Did Slayer ever think that Raining in Blood or Hot in the Chapel was going to resonate the way it did? You never know, right? You just create something that feels good. I think that's the main thing. Is like when it comes naturally to you and you put it out there and everybody else picks up on the fact that it came naturally to you, that it resonates well with them too. I think as soon as you start to try hard, and I think I am going to point at Metallica for the rest of my life, but I think that they're a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
They stopped doing what felt good and started to cater to, expectations. Right? It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter what it is that resonates. Just do what you feel like, and the most unexpected thing will be something extremely popular, and just fucking roll with it. Don't feel offended by it, and then your next song or your next record will bomb, but
And you
Okay.
do have to
Well, you
put in the
tried.
work,
Yeah,
right?
you were honest about it,
Yeah. And that's the thing, right? When I first started doing my podcast, I was going live pretty much every night, right? I think I was going live 4 to 5 nights a week and putting in serious time, hour and a half, 2 hours every night. And what I noticed was that my brain was starting to pre-program to be like, well, when I get home tonight, I'm not going to do A, B, and C. I'm going to go on TikTok and do X, Y, and Z. And so I started like, it was my norm, right? Come home, change, come to TikTok and go live. And every night it was, and so finally it got to the point where I was in it for about a month doing that. And I just looked at myself and I was like, what am I doing? Like, why is this controlling my life now, right? Like, why am I putting TikTok on a platform besides doing other things that I want to do? So I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale back, right? So instead of going 5 nights, I'm going to go 3 nights. And then I'm going to go every other night. I'm going to go Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And I'm not going to do anything Saturday. I'm not going to do anything Sunday. And then it got to the point where it was like, well, if everybody's watching me on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, what's the point of going live Monday through Thursday, right? I'll just go on the weekends. And so that's where I'm at now. That's where I've got comfortable doing Fridays, Saturdays, and maybe Sundays, and I'm totally content with that. And everything I have to say, I could say it when I'm live, and I don't have to do it every night. And that's where I'm at. So that's
that. I think you're absolutely right. What I've learned from my stuff, because I mean, I haven't done this for very long, and you've been on for longer than me, and you have 5 times more followers and shit than me. But what I've found in the 4 months that I've been on here is that you put in a lot of fucking time just to figure shit out. And it is, like I went live several times and it was like pulling fucking teeth. Yeah, I know it's about engagement. It's about being compelling. It's about, like something you're passionate about. And every time it was something I was passionate about, but it just didn't resonate with people. It seemed like, like I didn't get likes. I didn't get followers. I didn't get comments. I didn't, I didn't get, the average the average time that people stayed was like 5 seconds or something stupid like that, right? But it's like, okay, so the main thing for me that I needed to keep reminding myself is that it was not time wasted, right? It sounds like such a fucking cliche, but I spent that time learning what doesn't work and what doesn't resonate with people. So I will not make that mistake or try that approach again.
Yeah.
Right?
And like I said, I don't take any shortcuts, but when I got on TikTok, I found the way to cheat. And that was you friend requested everybody. They would accept your friend request. I'd get 30 to 70 new friends a day. I would just sit there and I didn't care who you were, if you were of relevance or not. Follow. And I would take the time to write 30 people a private message, say, hey, I followed you, follow me back. And they would follow me back. And I would just keep doing that until TikTok basically said, you can't friend request 75 people a day. So I found the magic number was like 51. So every day, follow 51. And throughout the day, hey, how's it going? I like your content. Hey, I like your content. Hey, I like your content. Hey, I like your content. And that's how I did it. There was no secret. So I went from 0 followers to 1,000 in about 13 or 14 days. There was no secret behind it. I figured out the algorithm and I used it to my advantage. I was very lucky because in January of 24, when I started, it'll be a year in January now. So I'm about 10 months into it. I learned right away that the FYP, before it got to where it is now, only a couple people knew about it. And I just happened to stumble upon it. And I made one video with me saying, hey, this is my FYP. Follow me and I'll follow you back. Comment and I'll comment back. And that post had 4,550 responses on it. And I think it had like 75 or 85,000 views. And that's what got me to the forefront of that, because I was getting 200 to 300 people following me a day. And so within 3 months, I had well over 3,000 followers, and I went live within a month. I started January 14th. By February 1st, I was going live. So I found the algorithm, and like I said, I don't, take anything away from it, but like I found the way to basically cheat, and I did.
Yeah.
And now you can't do that anymore. When you start on TikTok.
Yeah. It depends on what you want to accomplish too, though, right? Like what you do with One Fun Guy, not with the Podkvlt. Like we're different with the Podkvlt, what we're doing today,
right?
Compared to what you generally do,
sure.
Which is which I admire. Like you're you're amazing because you're just interested in people, whatever they do, whatever they are, and you talk to people about it, and you're obviously very genuinely interested in what they have to say and where they're at. So you're generalized in that sense. I don't have that talent or that interest. Like I'm much more niche, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to build an audience in in industrial extreme metal type of thing, right? Which means that I can't just go follow and request from anybody that comes my way, right? It needs to be, so please don't misunderstand me here, right?
No, I get it.
It's just that like it will take a longer time for me to reach that much narrower kind of audience. What you do with One Fun Guy, you have appeal so much broader, so you can totally do that, right?
And what I did
to me, it might hurt me if I would go with Grandma's Bakery as a follower, right?
And so what I did is I, like I said, when I started my platform and I said, who am I going to reach, right? I used TikTok, and I found this out relatively quickly, was that it was the best platform to interact with people and to connect with them, because if you send somebody a message on Facebook and you're not their friends, they're going to delete it. And if you send somebody a message on Instagram, they're not going to respond until they do some digging, right? They're going to make sure that you're a real account, that you're a real person. On TikTok, you didn't have to do that. You could send somebody a message with a thumbs up, and they would send you a thumbs up back and say, hey, I like your content. And that's how I started getting people for my podcast, right? I would go to like-minded people and I would say, hey, I like what you're doing. Would you want to be a guest on my show? And that's kind of how I grew, because when you look at my first few videos on YouTube, right, they were all my friends, right? I went to the people I knew. Hey, would you be a guest on my podcast? Sure. What do I say? I'm like, I don't know. We're going to figure it out together. And that's what we did. So every time I used the philosophy.
That's part of the appeal. Right. Sorry to cut you off, but I think that, the way that you get so interested in people and you talk about, about the things that I think it's so super great. You can take anybody and turn it into a really good conversation.
I appreciate that.
But keep going.
And so all I was going to say is, when I did it, all I wanted to do was not make the same mistakes that I made before, which is what most people do in their daily lives, right? You make a mistake, you learn from it, and you try not to do it again. And I started looking at what I wanted to do with my guest, right? I wanted to make my show about them, and the people that I watched on podcasting, that's what they did. So again, I use them as an example all the time, but Joe Rogan, right? When Joe Rogan has an actor on, he talks about their movies, how they got into acting. He doesn't talk about his acting career. No one cares about that. They want to talk. So, and I like the fact that one day he could have an actor on, a musician, a scientist, a physicist, a comedian. And I was like, well, I like all these things, right? Like, I like music, I like sports, I like wrestling, so I was like, well, if he could do it, so could I. And that's what I did. And I was like, well, now I'm going to try to find people that are outside of my comfort zone, right? I don't know anything about art. I don't know anything, but I'm going to get an artist on and we're going to do it. And that's what I did. I started reaching out to people and I'm like, hey, would you want to talk about how you create art? And they're like, sure. And that's what I did. And that's how, I've had people that come on that are writers talk about poetry. I know nothing about poetry, right? Only thing I know about poetry is a couple poets that I've come across from high school and Jim Morrison.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's something that you're really good at, and I think that's one of the reasons why I'm happy to be joining your podcast rather than hosting my own, because it's one of those things that, to get back to where we started this conversation today, that maybe there's some spectrum thing going on or whatever, like to me, the way that my brain works is a way to acknowledge that someone says something to me, is to provide a perspective from my own experiences back in that. And sometimes that seems like a very egotistical, oh, I only like to talk about myself type of thing, but it's really not. It's a way of saying that I understand you because I have had a similar experience, or I have a similar experience in this, or a similar opinion because of this, right? But it comes across differently to a lot of people, right? And that's one way that my brain works, that can rub people the wrong way. And that's also why I don't think that I would be a very good podcast host, because I think that I would end up talking about myself more than
and you could do that, right? And I always said, right,
it would make the impression, at least, like what I would feel like I am talking about you, and I am telling you that I am relating to what you're saying, to an external viewer. It wouldn't seem that way, right? So but you're really good at that. So I just want to give you a huge thumbs up to that.
And I've said this since the beginning, right? We connected based on music and our fondness for bands and our lives and, everything that we have and everything that we've gone through, right? But I've said this from the bottom of my heart. My favorite post of yours is when you talked about the differences between Sweden and the United States. It was the most I was like, this is awesome, right? That was the video that I connected with the most out of all the music videos and all the give me your top 5 metal bands or that video captivated me. I'm like, because you don't think about that, right? And so, when you said when you go to the bus stop in Sweden and nobody acknowledges you, they won't look you in the eye. They look down, they look away, right? And it's like completely different. It's different worlds. But that video captivated me. I loved it.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, no, I that's probably the post that I got the most angry responses back from, though.
Loved it. Yeah.
Because mostly because Americans hate to be generalized. Like, oh, you're talking about the Northerners, I'm Southern, and blah 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 blah. But it's I get that. But it was a jest type of thing. But it's kind of cool. In general, I mean, I think psychology is really interesting. I think it's and it's to tie it back to the metal thing too. Like I said in the beginning, like I think that it takes a certain psychology for someone to be in the metal scene as immersed as some of the people. Like if you're wearing a battle vest, I can guess that you're not comfortable among most people. Or like I can draw certain conclusions about your psychology a little bit based on, because but it's a subtle way of sending those psychological signals along, right? I tend to gravitate towards those people that are uncomfortable in a normal situation. I like people that are more comfortable in outside of the normal situations, right?
I mean, let's face it, when you go to an Amana March show, you know what you're getting yourself into, right? The people that are going to be there are going to be Norse, they're going to be Viking looking, they're going to have beards, they're going to have long hair. There's no secret behind it, right? You know what you're getting when you go to that show.
it's almost, you know, I'm sorry to say, but it's almost become a little bit too predictable now. Like I wish that, you know, that there were fewer bald guys with beards. You know, you know, it's like, you know, like I what was it I went to? It was Bloodbath. That I went to see at Thalie Hall, and there was this sort of normie looking guy that came in with a water bottle, and he just sort of stood in the middle of the floor, put his water bottle down, and then started to do like EDM type dance, listening to Bloodbath, or was it Archgoat or something like that. And that was fucking amazing, because it's like, I have not seen that before. You know, like that was way cooler than, you know, the mosh pit that happened later or whatever, right? You know, like, you know, I love the unexpected. So yeah, it's become a little bit predictable. Sure, I made a couple of posts about that too, especially with industrial, right? Industrial music, I feel like, you know, people are still saying that, oh, the best industrial bands are Ministry, Nine Inch Nails, White Zombie, whatever, right? You know, like, okay, so it's nothing happened since 2020, like, or since 1995. But then Anal Not Track that I mentioned before is still like metal shit that puts that stuff in there, and Smashed Arrow, they're, you know, just gotta dig down. But yeah, I think that's maybe one. I'm totally going off on a tangent here, but I do think that the psychology and the belonging of the scene is to be different, and I think that the differentness has been lost a little bit. It's still there, but you have to, as you did back then, you have to dig deep down to find where that happens. And on that track, it's not very deep. I realize that there's like, you know, a layer or two down, but so it's not deep in the underground. But
and the one band that comes to mind that kind of tied it all together is Gotta Be Round. I mean, if you look at
they kind of ruined it, didn't they?
I mean, you know, because they basically took what Ministry and Nine Inch Nails were at their core, and they basically took what Metallica was at their core, and they just sandwiched them together, and they became this industrial metal band that just kind of skyrocketed because of their awesome live shows and their pyro. But they kind of moved that scene way up to eyesight.
Yeah, I would say that they took some gore stuff in there too. You know, because they had, you know, not. I know. Was it a couple of years ago they played Soldier Field, and they had like a giant penis that shot foam out or whatever, right? Which is, you know, Gore did that when I saw them in '94 or whatever. You know, so it's still like, you know, they took all the, you know, all the stuff and sort of made it.
There's no other heavy metal band that's going to bring a toilet out.
Offensive enough to be offensive, but not too offensive. You know, like, you know.
Right.
Garma's gonna say,
how many other bands?
Yeah. Right.
How many other bands are going to bring a toilet out and flush Fred Durst on stage?
but you see what I'm saying, right? You know, it was like, it was heavy. You know, so they kind of ruined it a little bit, but you know, you can't blame them anyway. They saw an opportunity and took it and did a really good job of it. So
they've been doing it for 30 years now, and they're
just not my thing. They're great. You know, I will not complain if someone puts on Rammstein. I will not. You know, there are a lot of those like where I won't complain. But I'm not going to pay attention to going deep into their discography or whatever. Right. It's just not interesting enough to me. I like the people that are trying, you know, not to be tryhards, but people that are trying to like, you know, let's do something new.
And that's where I think we said last time, right? We gave credit to Marilyn Manson.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a tough one also, right? Because if you're asking for my opinion there, I think that he was a Jim Morrison to some extent. Like, I think that he was more looking for the shock than the musical innovation, right? I think that he was, it was more about the social aspect than the musical, more than the, you see what I'm saying, right? You know, like,
no, I get it.
The music was an accompaniment to the rest of the message,
you know,
right?
but that's what I'm saying. Like, when you get a band that absolutely makes shitty music and they try to do something that's shock, it falls short. And Manson kind of found that balance of good music with that kind of shocky, spooky, and he mixed the metal and industrial and kind of, you know, took more of the trance involved in it and kind of moved it into metal. And it was right place, right time, right? People wanted that kind of, you know, his first album, Smells Like Children, was awesome.
Yeah, no, I'm not knocking that. But I don't think that he went much further than Rob Zombie, for example. So, but Rob Zombie didn't have weird, contact lenses or, you know, the visuals that came with it.
Yeah, he did it.
So if you would just play the music to me side by side, Marilyn Manson is not that far off. You know, like I don't think that the music really pushed that far to be sort of uncomfortable or whatever. Like, you know, Marilyn Manson was more about the shock of the song titles and you know, the way that he looked and appeared and the things that happened on stage and all that stuff, right? That Rob Zombie didn't do. Musically though, very close to Ministry or Rob Zombie or Static X or any of the same bands at that time. So musically, I don't think that Marilyn Manson pushed things very far. So that's my opinion on that.
Yeah, I just kind of think that when you look at a genre that was kind of hurting for new musical talent, everything is place and time, and he found that place and time and merged it, and it worked. You know, because like I said, that I'm not a fan of Marilyn Manson's other albums. But that first one, Smells Like Children, was phenomenal. Like, it was a great album at a great time when rock needed that.
Yeah, sounds great. And also, you know, I think that a lot of misfit kids I think it did more good than bad, even though it was painted in a bad light. But I think that a lot of misfit kids that felt like they weren't belonging anywhere felt like, you know, oh, there are people out there like me.
Yeah.
Even though they might not have been in the same hometown or whatever, it was still like a little bit of a relief. Some of them took it out the wrong way, obviously. Columbine, unfortunately, when they blamed Marilyn Manson for that, it may have had a role, whatever, right? But I think that's, you know, a vast minority of people that took it the wrong way. I think that, you know, if you look at 99% of the kids that heard Marilyn Manson were like, oh, this speaks to me, and and they could find some peace in that. I think I do think that a lot of the extreme metal shit helps people find peace. It's really funny too. Like, through my account too, you know. Seeing comments about, you know, when I want to wind down, I go home and put some Napalm Death in my headphones. It's like, how many people would say that Napalm Death in your headphones would be relaxing? But that's what those brains work like, you know, like not everyone is a Barry Manilow guy, you know?
Right. That's it, right? He does write the songs that make the whole world sing.
You know, I'll confess, I do have a Barry Manilow album that I like. I do like Barry Manilow. Yeah. I'm gonna confess it right here, right now, and I'm not afraid of it, of admitting that. He writes good songs. Yeah, he did not write the songs.
Right. He sang the songs.
Though. Yeah. You know, he just sang that one. He didn't write it. but anyway, my dirty secrets. I shouldn't be afraid of admitting that, but
we all have them.
I do like bare metal.
That's awesome.
It's whatever. I only have one record though, so I can hide it quickly if I need to.
The Copacabana, right?
No. I forget the title of it, to be honest. But it has,
yeah.
Anyway, what can I say? I'm also I do like to write songs that are melodic and stuff, and I think that sing along type of things are good. I don't mind.
I always love
or
like when
whatever
you have interview musicians, and they say, "Give us some artists that we didn't expect you to listen to." And hearing their answers is really unique. That's what I always liked about Phil, right, from Pantera. Because he would say, I like the Smiths, I like Morrissey, and you're like, you wouldn't think an extreme metal guy would like the Smiths, but it's like, the Smiths are awesome, right? They wrote great songs.
There's chemistry in our brains that are connected in ways that that you don't know what, like it's unpredictable, right? So, and I don't think that we're in control of it, So, it's a matter of acknowledging it and not being ashamed of it. I think, So that's what I've reconciled with is that, awesome. I can listen to Wehrmacht or Cerebral Fix or Concrete Socks or something one day, and then still, someone puts on bare metal the next day, and that makes my arm hair stand up, rather than trying to fight it. Like, why shouldn't I acknowledge the fact that it that makes me feel good? Like, why should I be ashamed of it? There's no reason to ignore those feelings. Like, it happens spontaneously. I'm not in control of it. I hear the shit, and it makes my body react in a way that gives me some sort of euphoria. Like, why should I fight that? That's not fair. And I don't give a shit if people are saying that. What the fuck? You like bare metal? It's like, sorry,
right?
that's my brain.
And it's crazy because like we all grew up with different music, right? We didn't all start listening to Entombed or Morbid Angel, right? Like, I grew up, my family is Italian, I grew up on Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin. So when I was a kid,
some great stuff there too.
The first music I ever heard was my dad putting a record on of Frank Sinatra, right? I didn't know what any hard rock or heavy metal was. I'm 2 or 3 years old. Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin were the standard in my house. Jerry Vale, another one, Frankie Valli, those guys.
Fly Me to the Moon is one of my favorite songs too. I again, it's like you never know what hits you. But I think it's really important to not reject when it does. I think that I do think that we're more inclined to reject things than to accept things.
Sure.
I think that we're in the schoolyard type of mentality. Like, I'm in this corner with these people that like these things, and if I like something that's outside of what the commonalities in our little clique here is, then I'm going to be rejected.
Sure.
As I've become older, I don't subscribe to that anymore. So to me, it's more like, if I like a Frank Sinatra song, I like that. I'll own everything to the end of the world. Like, that's why I'm not really afraid of saying that I love bare metal.
And we all love
whatever.
And the thing is, like, we all enjoy different things, right? There's certain music that you just listen to that you can get, and like I say it all the time. Like, I went to school in Wisconsin, there's a lot of country artists and people that, you know, I had a fondness for country music because it's all I heard for 4 years. So now I appreciate it. It's not my go-to, right? But if a good country song comes on, I'll listen to it, right? I know a few, right? So it's just what it is, right? And you have some metalheads that are like, you know, I won't listen to anything else. And it's like, well, then how really expansive are you, right? Like, you have to open yourself up to other music, because when you go to a wedding is a perfect example, right? You're going to have dance music, you're going to have rap music, you're not going to hear Pantera at most weddings, or Cannibal Corpse or Anthrax, right? You're going to hear Sister Sledge, and you're going to hear George Funk, and you're going to hear James Brown. You're going to hear dance music. You're not going to hear hard rock and heavy metal. So at some point, to say that you won't listen to it, are you really going to walk out of a wedding because they're not playing Slayer? No, you're going to deal with it for 2 hours and go home.
Yeah. I went to a dinner party at my sister-in-law's fairly recently, and I get along really well with her husband, and he was like, you know, okay, let's put on some tunes. What do you want to hear? And we both like electronic music quite a bit, but I said, how about some Southern boogie rock? I want to hear some Marshall Tucker Band, some Skinner, some Foghat, you know. And he was like, what?
Can you put on Carcass, please?
Totally got shut down, but it was one of those things too, where it's like, I was in the mood for some good fucking groovy guitar picking, you know, you know, but we're getting into a little bit of a different territory there too, because I think that particular kind of music that I heard first when I was in Sweden, right? So it did not have a political connotation, but I think it does here. So it's like, if you listen to Foghat or Leonard or Marshall Tucker Band or any of that shit, that means you're, you know, whatever political person. When that's
you know, when it's weird,
from my mind. I just love that fucking groove. Like, it's so fucking awesome.
When you hear "Heard It in a Love Song" come on the radio, everyone's singing along, right? Everybody knows Marshall Tucker and that song, right? And it's the same with Foghat. You hear "Slow Ride," everyone's jamming the Slow Ride,
right? You know, like, and it just seemed like a harmless thing to ask. It's like, it's elevator music to keep in the background, but you know, I don't feel like listening to Massive Attack today, you know. But it was like, no, what were you at?
You know, and I always say it, right? I've been to a lot of hard rock and heavy metal concerts, and one of my favorite all-time concerts was the Black Crowes. Were phenomenal.
Oh fuck, they're so fucking awesome. I don't.
It was a great. I mean, it was 2 hours of awesome music. They were fantastic.
Such fucking good musicians, and that, you know, the singer's baby brother, like, you know, like he was in the band when he was like 14 or something.
Yeah, Christian Nurse Robinson.
Fuck, shit. No. Full cred.
That was one of my like all-time favorite shows, and that's the one that it was the first time ever. After the show, you could buy the CD of the show. They pre-recorded it off the soundboard. You could wait in line.
You told me about that.
Yeah, they were burning discs.
Yeah, I totally cut you off there, but it's. But that's also like one of those times when okay, so tying it back a little bit to what we were talking about before, like there are still mainstreamy type acts, because let's face it, Black Crowes were, you know, they were on, you know, the main MTV rotation list, but by doing that thing, that still means that they fucking care, which resonates with me, right? And that's also why I have respect for Taylor Swift. You know, I mean, I won't put on Taylor Swift ever, you know, in my playlist or whatever, right? But as an artist, I respect what she's doing, and you know, good for her that, you know, a quarter of the planet.
We've said it before. You don't have 300 million fans because you suck.
Well, and she's not. I don't think that she's fooling anybody. I don't think that she's trying to pull a blanket over anybody's eyes. I think that she actually is what she is to some extent, right? I mean, fine. I do think that
that's the appeal.
She. I think that she still realizes that she is a product, and she needs to sort of maintain that to some extent. So I'm not stupid, but I still think that there's some integrity there in the shit that she's doing. So I'm not. You're not going to hear me knock Taylor Swift.
Yeah, and then to be honest with you, when you look at the grand scheme of things, right? Whether they're a rapper or they're a country star or they're a pop star or they're a rock star, you know talent when you see it, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to come through, right? You're not going to take an awful singer and have fans follow them, right? It has to be the total package. And as much as I hate that stupid voice rap where they use the auto-tune and stuff like that, at the end of the day, they're putting their music out there and people are listening to it. So you don't have to necessarily like it, but you have to respect it, because these guys are multi-millionaires, right? They're doing something right, because me and you aren't.
Yeah, but just because they're making multi-million dollar incomes doesn't mean that they've earned it. Yeah, you said it. To me, it's more about, does it feel genuine, right? You know, because they're. I haven't been in the rap thing to pay enough attention to people where it's like, okay, so this guy just found the right people to make enough money to whatever, right? You know, like, I still feel like, again, I haven't been into the rap thing so much,
right?
But I get an impression usually of artists when I have a little bit of a spidey sense of like, okay, so you're in this for the art, or you're in this for the money and the fame or whatever, right? You know, the ambition of making it. You know, like I get turned off by, you know, the making it part of it, right?
Yeah,
you know, it's more about, you know, and to me, a lot of that comes from how bands treat their fans, right? If you really give a shit about the fans, the people that come to your shows, and you support that and all that shit, and you know, that's a good gauge. You know, if people give a shit about the people that come to the shows, about the people that buy your shit,
right, right,
and they give props back, that's a good indicator to me.
Yeah, and it's a harder pill to swallow, though, because you look at people who have genuine talent and it takes them time to get put on the scene, and then you have somebody who you question how they managed to get a record deal. It's not fair, but life's not fair. But again, these guys are selling millions of albums and we're not.
Yeah. I keep ranting here. I have so many opinions on here, though, right? But I think that this is one of the really, really, really good things about how things are changing in the music industry now, that is shifting to social media more than record labels, right? You know, because it used to be that record labels had so much money and power to push product onto people, regardless, you know, regardless of what those people were like. I know that you may disagree on Led Zeppelin, for example, right? Fine. A lot of their reputation comes probably from their roadies and stuff, and you know, because of the shit that they did. But you know, in the history of rock, you know, bad things happening to people, Led Zeppelin and their entourage, you know, caused a lot of damage and abuse to a lot of people, right? Which in today's world, you know, Led Zeppelin would have been dead a long time ago, you know, in terms of how they behaved or whatever, right? terrible people, maybe not them themselves, but the people they surround themselves with. So, but what I'm saying is that the product now is more the genuine, relation to the artists as they portray themselves and how they put themselves out in the world, and a lot of it comes from the TikToks, the Instagrams, the Snapchats, and all that stuff, right?
And that's the thing, like,
which I think is genuine. And labels don't have any control of that because it's not a pre-packaged thing. Yes, they can tell an artist that, oh no, don't talk about the fact that you're gay, or no, don't talk about the fact that blah blah blah, right? But it's still like there's so much going on so fast that they cannot control everything.
And it's accessibility to the fans, right? It's all about perception. If somebody sends a message to a band on TikTok or Instagram and they get a response back, as a teenager listening to that band, you're going to be like, this is awesome. They reached back out to me. Well, it's somebody that they hired to respond to the messages, but it's the perception that the band's reaching out to you.
Yeah.
They're responding.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry, I've been rambling and going off on like 40 different tangents.
We all have. It's been awesome
tonight. We're both tired. I think we're just not saying that we're filling space, but
this makes the best shows, though, right?
But it was like a little bit of a early Festivus thing.
Yeah.
It was a bit of an airing of grievances.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
So I hope you're cool with that.
No, let's do it. So for Thursday, I was kind of thinking, do you want to talk about the social media aspect of music in modern day?
Yes.
And we'll talk about how bands interact, how they self-promote, how they put out singles more now, right? It's much more fan-friendly to put out an EP than to wait a decade for an album.
It's a topic near and dear to my heart, so that sounds perfect to me.
Let's do it.
Cool.
All right, guys. Well, thank you all for hopping on. As always, we love and appreciate the support, guys. We're just two guys that love music and like talking about our, aspects of what it does to us. And obviously, we're passionate about it. And we all have different thoughts and opinions, but that's what makes us us. And that's why we're here. So hopefully you got a little bit out of it. Kelly, you want to say anything?
Nothing other than follow One Fun Guy Podcast if you're not already, or follow me at Kelly Arsenic if you haven't already. Actually, I think tomorrow I'm gonna start a Discord server as well, so keep lookout for that.
We'll plug it like crazy. So Cal, we'll start it with you and we'll go from there. So
sounds good.
All right, Kelly, let's say goodnight to everybody, and we'll see you guys on Thursday, right? 7:30 p.m.
Sounds great.
Let's do it. See you guys then. Thursday night, 7:30 p.m. Bye, everybody.
Cheers.